Developing a technological action plan. This presentation is not only going to cover dealing with implementing a one-to-one program, but it's going to look at a whole technological plan, which is more than just laptops or more than any one initiative. It's looking at if your school needs to have a plan, not only for what it's doing right now, even if it's not going to roll out laptops, there needs to be some type of plan of how your technology is going to be integrated, what part does it role, what role is it going to play in the school, and then you need to have some type of framework to go from there. A technology plan should focus on integrating technology into the teaching and learning process to transform the way teachers teach and students learn. It should not be just a static, okay, we're bringing in smart tablets, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. Why are you doing that? How are teachers going to use this? What kind of training is going to be provided? At the very least, a technology plan should be, embedded in or a supplement to the comprehensive school improvement plan. It should not be independent. It needs to be a part of the whole overall full mission of the school and of the institution. A planning committee is critical to the success of any technology plan. The committee should include expertise in planning, in building a vision, the needs of assessment, curriculum and instruction, evaluation, goal setting, professional development, technology hardware, support and integration, and financial planning. For it to be successful, it has to cover all these different areas. Reasons why you want to actually sit down and spend the time to write down a technology plan. First of all, if you don't make a plan, those who fail to plan to fail. It's really important that you have some type of outline so you know the direction you're going, or there is no organized plan and it's just going to be helter-skelter. Also, that helps bring in stakeholder consensus regarding the role of technology. When GCA looked at rolling out laptops, we formed a small committee of teachers, and some of the people that were on that committee were actually people who weren't real thrilled about going to a laptop program. But we were able to pull them in, get their feedback, and over time, as we moved forward with it, they became more interested in the program because they had personal buy-in to it because they were part of the process. You also need to do your best to avoid budgetary surprises. I always recommend that you take your budget figures and you estimate a little bit on the high side because there's things that are going to happen. For example, when I say I'm going to roll out projectors to all the classrooms, you also need to realize that you're going to have cabling that's got to go in that. Are you going to be adding sound systems at the same time you add projectors and VHS and DVDs? And what about electrical needs? In order to power all this, you're going to have electricity. Is electricity already sitting at those locations? Or are you going to have to pull electrical wires? These are all the types of things that when you're rolling out a plan, part of having a committee, you need to have someone from plant services or from your maintenance crew to be able to come in and sit down and say, if we're going to roll out these things, we have to get electricity. This is a problem because of the heating and air conditioning in this building. All of these are important factors. Reduce common but costly mistakes such as acquisition of incompatible hardware and software, unsupportable donations. You may get a donation once, but then you'll never get it again. So you can't just keep, we've got money in to roll out all this technology. Great. Now where are you going to get money to maintain this technology? You need to review the mission and educational philosophy, reflect on what it means to be an educational citizen in the 21st century. Does this include technology? If it doesn't, and your school philosophy and your school environment and your political environment, then fine. Rolling out the technology is not going to help. A well thought out plan can turn into a help to make a fundraising tool, not just once, but again, it has to be sustainable. Key elements of a technology plan. Basically, you need to understand the school background, the demographics, and the educational philosophy of the school. Technology has to integrate into all of those aspects. You also need to have curriculum integration. How is it going to tie into teaching the classes? What about professional development? Are teachers going to be tied in? Are they going to get training on how to use the technology? Or is it going to be demonstrated in a real classroom environment, how they can put it into place? Then your infrastructure, which is your hardware, your technical support, and your software. These are key elements also. And funding and budget, unless it can be sustained in the budget, repairs, upgrade, then it's not going to be successful. And of course, you need to be able to have some way of monitoring and evaluating, is this working? What can we do different? What needs to be done different? Basically, there are 5 technological focus areas, sometimes referred to as the TFA. But it needs to include student learning. This includes the technological skills, but not necessarily just technological skills, but teacher preparation and delivery of instruction, and then the administration, the data management, communication process. What is your backup process of the data? Resource distribution and use. How are you going to be able to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity at using this, or how are you going to spread it around so different people have access to the technology? And then technical support. You've got to have ongoing support and sustainability built into this. These 5 areas are interwoven throughout the entire technological focus area. It's very important that you keep that as a part of your plan, that you can have all 5 of these elements. If you don't, it's not going to be a successful plan. Your curriculum integration. You need to have clear goals and realistic strategy for using technology to improve the teaching and learning. And it needs to relate to a comprehensive improvement plan. If it's just, we're going to roll out technology and this is going to be wonderful, that's nice, but how does it really tie into the overall school mission, its philosophy, and its plan? You need to have timeline and benchmarks for implementing the strategy. Okay, we're going to roll out this laptops. I actually used a Gantt chart and used Gantt software, which is, there's some free, if you go do a Google search against Gantt, open source software, you'll find the Gantt chart's great product. It's called the Gantt Project. And I laid out, for example, in January, I was rolling out my wireless access points. And when that following August, we were going to roll out the full laptop program. Well, before I rolled out the full laptop program, I knew I wanted to have my wireless in place, tested, make sure it was solid. I knew that was solid, then I could go to the next part, the next phase of the project. I had timeline, I had benchmarks, I was going to order laptops, I was going to test the laptops, I was going to make sure the image was good. Then you need to articulate and correlate between your content standards and your technological use. How are you going to say, we're meeting these standards and this is how we're using the technology to tie into this? Units of instructions may be helpful in the way to organize a chapter. Alternatively, you can organize by systematically considering every single content standard. So there's different ways of approaching how you're going to do this curriculum integration. Both have pluses and minuses, and part of it depends upon the philosophy of the teacher and also the school. Technology is more than just wires and computers and software. That's one thing you need to realize. It is a tool, but it is just a tool that has to be a part of the whole curriculum. Develop the format for the final plan. Is the technology planning being developed for 1, 3, or 5 years? 5 years, it's going to be real general. 3 years, I think, is more sustainable. 1 year is a definitely good goal, but then that means every year you're going back and changing it. What I recommend is doing like a 3-year, this is our 3-year plan, but every year you need to review it. Where are we at? How are we making these changes? Is the funding coming in? Has the economy changed? Each of these things make a difference. And then you need to determine what technology will be included in the plan. Does that include your telephone system? Is it your audio visual? Is it the computers? Is it technical support? All of these things are aspects that you need to determine where they fit in the technology plan. We included each set of components under each building. For example, you need to have a goals. And one of the ways that it can be done is you can do it building specific, or you can do it campus wide. If you're in one building, then it's obviously very easy. We're spread out over 14 buildings here on our campus. Well, we have different goals for the gymnasium than we have for the cafeteria, than we have for the dorms, than we have for the main science building or administration building. And what are the objectives and your timelines, and who's responsible? Is it one person responsible for everything, or do you have it broken down by different people that are kind of more in charge of their area? And then also you need to know where your funding source is. So basically you're looking at a planning cycle. First you got to get started. Then you need to have your technology mission statement. Where is the goal? What are you reaching for? Then what's your current technology? Basically you need to say what is being used presently, what would teachers possibly use, what are they willing to use. Then you need to say, okay, this is what we're using. Now we'll go to our goals and objectives. Then you develop and implement an action plan and some timelines. And then basically you need to monitor and evaluate your technology plan. Is it sustainable? Is it working? So each of these things are something that the committee has to look at and work together. I recommend that you divide it among different people because it helps they get buy-in to the project. I also recommend that you have one person who brings all of the different, if you have different people that are working on this project, it needs to be basically consolidated by one person. So that way it's all down into one nice report format. Then you need to basically kind of score what your final report looks like. You need to review it, and then you need to realize, are we going to be able to follow this? And then you need to check to see, do we actually have some of this already in place? You might be surprised. Sometimes when you say, we will need to use these technologies, well, you might already have those technologies on site. And then you need to determine what is missing from our plan and divide the committee to finish each of the different sections accordingly to what you have available or what resources or what information you need to be able to dig out and see if it's going to work on your technology plan. The technology committee is the key to this whole thing, and their planning who's going to be on it is also very, very key. The people that you need on this committee are people that are willing to work together, and you need to realize that they need to see what the vision is, and they need to buy into the vision and the mission statement. And they also have to be able to make tough decisions. Sometimes you have to say, no, we're not going to do that because our overall vision and mission statement, that's not where we want to go. It would be nice to have, but that's not where our institution is heading. I recommend that you keep them small, no more than 10 people at most. I recommend more, a size of about 6 or 7 people. You need to include all groups: students, teachers, board administrators, parents, community, support staff, and maintenance staff is key. That's one that's often overlooked, but you need to have someone who understands the buildings, the wiring, the air conditioning, the heating. All of these elements come into, when you're doing technology, these are very key elements that are oftentimes overlooked. And a person can be, a parent who's also a board member or a community member. Each of these things can be pulled in. Address the technological focus areas. Relate to other committees. Is there other committees going on at the school? Is there a curriculum committee? There needs to be some type of crossbreeding, so that way there's not a committee to itself independent. And then you need to look at the building plans. The impact of wiring and other plant services is often overlooked, as I mentioned. As you're laying out your network and as you're laying out your infrastructure, there's a couple different types of diagrams. There's a logical diagram. Well, this is how from our district WAN, this is how the information flows through our system. So you can follow this through on this chart and see this is the logical progression of how the information comes into our network. This is where it goes between the different buildings and the rooms. Then you actually have a physical diagram. The physical diagram actually kind of lays out the buildings and gives you a higher level view of this is where the actual lines are laid, this is how it impacts, this is where it comes from. This is very helpful, especially for dealing with, well, we're going to have to dig some trenches to put in these cablings, or where are we going to run this. So not only the logical but also the physical, and not just the physical but also the logical progression. These are important things to realize. You need to do both. Both your funding and your budget, you need to have realistic estimates on costs for implementing the proposed plan. And you need to identify both potential funding sources for obtaining the necessary hardware infrastructure and technical support and software. Then you need scenarios for enriching the program if incremental funding materializes. So if you start off this program and you've got a drive and you've got some funding coming in, and then someone that you're not expecting comes up and says, hey, I like what you guys are doing. Here's some more money that I would like to see to go towards the program. Then you might have some projects sitting on the side saying, yeah, we'd like to throw these in. But you've got to remember that it has to be sustainable. And it needs to tie into the actual school budget. If it's just somewhere where you're saying we're going to do all this great technology and it has no reality in the current school budget as far as sustainability, then it's really not a good action plan at all. And it needs to cover at least the current year plus the next 2 years. Then you need to know who, what, when, where tables. Basically, you need to develop who's going to be responsible for each part of the phase, when is it going to be done. Oftentimes you'll find that there's, in the middle of implementing some technological plan, that something changes. The economy changes, the technology changes, and you need to be able to make mid-course corrections and say, this was our plan, but as technology's changed, we're moving over to this. And there needs to be an annual review. Do surveys of students and teachers, and possibly even your parents, to get their input of what's working, what's not working, and how they feel like it's helping your school environment. Who actually writes the technology plan? It should be one person should serve as the editor-in-chief. And remember, it's not primarily about the technology. It's more about how it's going to help the curriculum, look at the state standards. All of this, you need to determine the software and other technological needs, not just the computers. It's not just we're buying 50 new computers or 100 new computers or 10,000 new computers. That's not the goal. The goal is, what are we doing with this? What software? What's the learning goals? Business manager is a crucial contributor because they can tell you what is sustainable. And then you need to have a lead person who's going to help mentor the teachers, and you should have a lead mentor type teacher person who can say, this is what in the trenches, this is what the teachers need, this is what they're using in their classroom, this is what they could use. And then that person will be the go-to person for the other teachers to come back and ask questions for. Significant technical expertise is required. If you're going to have a solid network, you need someone who knows how to run a network. Not someone who is, I've played with computers a little bit so I can run it. Unless you're willing to give that person the training they need to be able to really run an enterprise network. Because as you roll out the technology, if it does not work, it'll very quickly become something that's just thrown on the back shelf and never used again. That's why you've got to have someone who's able to answer questions and who is able to solve the problems as they come up. Because with technology, things go wrong. You need to be able to solve those problems as they do. What makes a great technology plan? It needs to be meaningful. It needs to have the participation of the stakeholders, significant investment in professional development, ample budget for the technical support. I think the timeline needs to be about a three-year process. You need to have measurable outcomes tied to student achievement, detailed milestones. Just one significant new technology initiative per school year. If you try to throw all this technology into the classroom, it'll be too much for the teachers. That's why I recommend, for example, if you're doing a laptop program, you need to be able to say, okay, we're going to roll out the laptops this year to the teachers. Then next year, we're going to roll out the teachers have been using the laptop for a year. Now we're going to roll it out to the students. We're going to give a couple more pieces of software for the teachers to use. We'll let them get trained on that. First, they got comfortable with the laptops. Now they're ready to use this next set of software. Attention to security is very important. You got to have virus protection, disaster recovery. You need to look at new trends. Are you going to have a mobile lab? Are you going to a one-to-one program? Are you going to use, whiteboards or smart tablets? And then you need to have a broad definition of technology. Remember, it's not just computers and networks. And the goals and the numbers need to tie with the actual budget. There is a technology plan template that will be listed on my website, and it was also a part of the training that we gave. I hope this